Thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course.
So,
yes,
you do a lot of things.
I do a lot.
You're
of
a very
things.
funny person.
Yes. Oh, thank you. God, I hope so.
So, how has your Comic-Con been going?
So far, it's been really good. I had a panel last night that was really fun. It ended in a sing-along of All Star by Smash Mouth, as you do.
Wait, what?
What?
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
wait.
what?
There was a sing-along
Yes.
by Smash Mouth.
No. By me. Because
Okay.
I looked out to the crowd. It was the end of the night. Everybody, I could tell the audience was starting to fall asleep. And I looked at the audience and I just said, "Some," and they took it over.
Oh,
wow.
It was really
That's
impressive.
intense.
They,
I love that
sincerely-
everyone knew the song
one
enough
syllable.
that they already knew where to go.
It was amazing.
It's really pitch perfect
yeah.
too. It like triggered it in me.
Oh, did you feel
I
it
almost,
also?
Yeah, I almost started.
Right now, come on.
Nope,
No, I
we don't
think
have the rights to that.
copyrights
We
might
do
be-
not
yeah,
have,
I understand,
unfortunately, not
absolutely.
gonna, but thanks.
You're so welcome. Sorry for immediately running this off the rails.
No, that feel real good.
That did.
At
Good
least I waited to the end of my panel to run it off the rails, honestly.
Right. When the
But I
rails
like
are
this
short.
energy. The
Thank
energy
you.
you're bringing here.
Thank you so much.
I assume, I hope, I'm excited
Yes.
to see if that's the energy we're going to see in Big Hero 6. I'm
Gosh,
really
yeah, I
looking
think there
forward
is.
to that one.
The panel for Big Hero 6 was yesterday, and it was so much fun. The best part to me was that it was all kids who asked questions, and it was
I
just this
love when kids
lineup
ask
of really the cutest kids in the entire universe. This one little girl asked Scott Adsit what Baymax's favorite color is, and Scott said he likes the whole spectrum, and then he asked if she wanted to come up and give him a fist bump, and so they did the Baymax fist bump on the stage. It was really adorable.
Aww.
It was all little kids. Oh, everybody was crying. I think there's pictures and videos of like everybody, the cast, everybody. It
The
was
greatest kid show of all time. Everyone was crying.
It was well. Listen, I don't know if you've seen Big Hero 6, but
Yeah, yeah.
everyone was crying could be a tagline also. And then they showed two clips from. They showed 3 clips, and 2 of them are from an episode I wrote that's coming up in. I don't know when exactly it's airing, but it is about fan fiction. And it was done in a sort of a chibi anime style. And it was very cool to see. I hadn't seen it in color until yesterday. And so the first time I was seeing this thing that I wrote was in front of an audience of hundreds of people in one of the big Comic-Con halls. Which is very surreal. It's an experience I've never had before. And listen, might not have again. But it was really cool.
That was pretty awesome. So, you're a writer.
Yes.
You write the things.
Yeah, I write all of them.
All of the things.
If you've read a written thing, I've probably written it under a ghost name.
Congratulations. That's
You're
wonderful.
so welcome.
wow,
Thank you
it's
so
like
much.
there are libraries that are just
Yeah,
you.
everything from like J.K. Rowling to like Michael Crichton,
All you.
all me.
Great. So you
They-
answer
yeah.
all these questions.
I can answer any question
Any
you throw
question
at me.
ever.
Absolutely.
So-
I say that with confidence.
What inspired you? Because I think that the great thing about seeing the kids and like hearing about the kids is that
Right.
those kids are now like inspired. Like they're gonna remember these stories. These stories have impacted them. They're the questions that they ask her because
Right.
they go, "Hey, I really love this character. I wonder if this character likes the same thing I like." What
Yeah.
inspired you to become a writer?
Well, I think that it was something that it was one of those combinations of like it was a thing I always had sort of an aptitude for. I always like was a big reader. I think that's sort of the biggest thing. And then I also think that I was realizing I had a lot of issues with anxiety and depression as a kid, and the thing that really made me feel better was comedy. And I got really, really into comedy because I was like, oh, this is the thing that makes it feel worth it for me to kind of keep going, you know. And it's at some point, I guess I realized like, oh, I could do this for someone else too. And I was seeing all these people, like my heroes, like Maria Bamford, and people who were talking really openly about issues that I was dealing with. And I was like, oh, if I can kind of give that to somebody else, like that's the only thing I can think of that would be worth it to do. And I also ended up starting, I'm going to go ahead and plug it right here, a mental health nonprofit called Project You Are Okay. So if you're interested in mental health stuff, you should check out projectyouareok.org.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, Will Wheaton did a video, and it was like a thing at Comic-Con a couple years ago, which was fun.
What do you do to like get in the like writing headspace? Like, what is your ultimate prescription for anti-writer block?
Well, I think I have this kind of mantra, which is just that ideas feel better written down than they do in your head. When you're walking around and you've got this idea and it's just sort of like really percolating and you're like ready to put it out there, and you've just been chewing on it for a long time, it feels kind of heavy to carry around with you. You feel like you have to kind of keep chewing it over. And then the second that you've written it down, it's there, it exists, you can kind of let go. And so I think I've just reminded myself, like, it might suck to like sit down and stare at a blank page and start, but it will feel so much better. And it's only going to get done when you make it done. Like, this cannot exist outside of your head unless you write it down. So I think that's sort of like the attitude I have. And then I'm a big sprawler. Like, I just like put like all my computer and notes and everything everywhere, and they like lie like across the couch with my dog on top of me. And
What kind of dog?
We don't know. He's a rescue dog. We think he's maybe like part goat and part otter. He
a gotter.
Yeah, exactly.
I've heard of those dogs. They're really special and magical.
Really special and magical. He looks like a folded up pile of laundry. His name is Spoof. He has an Instagram, which is at Spoof. There it is. I decided that was the only thing I was going to plug last night as far as like on the panel, as far as social media. I was like, listen, I have a dog. He's the greatest dog you're ever going to see. He's like 6 or 7, and he's the straight man to like all of my partner and my bits that we do at him. We like force him into, so
Spoof, there it is.
Spoof, there it is. Check it out.
So were there any stories when you were a kid that really inspired you to like, and still inspire you? Like, is there inspiration you're finding now for the work you're doing with Big Hero 6?
Well, I was like such a huge fan of, I was a big fan of like Invader Zim and like some of the sort of like weird cartoons. Like, I was really lucky. I grew up in sort of like a golden age of like 90s kids cartoons, and people were doing cool experimental stuff.
Zim is so fun.
That was like a big inspiration.
Meeting Jonan the first time, I was like, because I read his comics too.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the comics
Johnny
as well.
And
Yeah,
Squee
I was way too young when I read them.
Oh,
but
100%.
it really scarred me. That I think being really messed up by those comics left a big mark.
It gets you to a good point.
Exactly.
I feel like it positive scarring. You know, it left a mark, but it's not a bad mark.
But I also love stuff like I love the Mighty Boosh, and I love Monty Python, and I love Blackadder, and I love things that are sort of like a just off-center look at like reality. I don't know. I think that's something that feels very homespun about them. To me, I think you can always tell when somebody's writing something that they connect with and that they find funny versus when they're writing something they think the audience will connect with and they think the audience will find funny. So I think I always want to come from a place of like, what am I going to do to entertain myself the most? Because that's going to be the most entertaining to the audience.
I like that. That's good advice. Well, I was thinking about Big Hero 6, and Scott Adsit, obviously, he's on the cast. Do you know that he is in Marvel Comics continuity as Scott Adsit as well?
Wait, I think I might actually
He's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. He is a Nova Corpsman. I'm wearing a Nova shirt, and I was just thinking about Scott, and it's just like, he is the most deeply connected Marvel person in the world.
In context, is he Scott Adsit from TV's 30 Rock?
He's just Scott Adsit. S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Scott Adsit. Nova Corpsman Scott Adsit. But he is Scott, I mean, he looks like him. He's like everything.
Wow, but also Baymax is also in Marvel mythology.
Yeah, it's real.
Wow.
It's weird.
I didn't know that. That's really cool. Good for him.
Yeah.
He's a genuinely nice guy.
He's great. He's such a sweetie. Do you have a favorite character to write for on the show?
Fred, I think off the top of my head, is probably, first of all, because everybody else on the show is smarter than me. And I don't know if you've ever had to write people saying science things. It's really hard. And Fred's the one where you get to be like, well, I get what you mean, but maybe you should explain it for Honey Lemon. Also creating the mythology. One of my favorite things is that within the show, Fred has his favorite comics that only exist within the world of Big Hero 6. And creating the mythology of something like Captain Fancy. Like, what is this comic in this world? What's the Kentucky Kaiju? Like, I think that's a fun thing to be able to do. And there's a character named Noodle Burger Boy whose first episode aired yesterday, who is an animatronic mascot for a fast food restaurant called Noodle Burger. But he's also like a little like 50s boy. Like, I don't know how to say it. He's like a little like Leave It to Beaver kind of robot kid.
Yeah, I mean, you had me at Noodleburger.
And I love this character. He has this jingle that's been stuck in my head for like 3 years, and I'm like, yeah, finally the public has to be on this with me.
Is it gonna earworm us?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
So I'm gonna have to need you guys to like go watch it though. But yeah, it's so Noodle Burger Boy and Fred are the ones that jump to mind. They also yesterday they released a clip of Minnie Max, who's a tiny Baymax-like character, except that he's sort of he's goofier. He's got a real sense of justice. He's Fred's sidekick. He's programmed to be like the ultimate sidekick.
Got it.
And he's voiced by John Michael Higgins, and it's fantastic.
That's exciting. When you were growing up, did you ever think, hey, I'm just going to write for these crazy cartoons? Like, that's nuts.
You know, sometimes I really like pretend I'm telling myself like age 10 about my life, and I don't think because I was the biggest Disney fan. Like, I love Disney movies more than I love real life, and I just think like it's something that I've always been incredibly fascinated by. I always was watching like the behind the scenes features and like wanted to know about the production process and all of that, and I don't even know that it occurred to me as a possibility because it seems so like, who does that? Who gets to do that? And I just feel really, really lucky to be able to tell stories that I do. Like, one thing I always think about is like 10 years from now, there's going to be some freshmen in college sitting around going, hey, remember that episode of Big Hero 6 when? And that's what you're writing for, right? It's the way that I think about Doug, or I think about like Hey Arnold. It's like the same, like any of the Disney cartoons. Or the way I think about Kim Possible, which my bosses created. So that's like that's cool. So
that must be incredibly powerful, thinking that like, you know, when I say Move It Football Head, like, you know, that's a throwback to something that, you know, like only 90s kids will remember. And so like you could be like doing that for like, I don't know, what do we call ourselves? We're not in the aughts anymore, but like that's what like the 2018 kids will remember, you know?
Yeah.
The end times kids.
God, I hope that's what they remember about
Thanks.
2018.
Right?
Yeah. But I think that's like that is what's really exciting, right? And also like with a show like this, you're saying to women, and you're saying to girls and kids of color especially, like, and they were saying this on the panel yesterday, science can be your superpower. Like you can do anything, and like you can and should go into STEM and like all these fields. Like, we want you to see yourself as a superhero who's like doing amazing things just with the power of your brain. Like, I think that's a really cool message. There were all these little girls in line who were asking about robotics, and I'm like, that's something I don't think that you would get at any other show, and that's really cool and powerful. Yeah. And Genesis Rodriguez, who voices Honey Lemon, was saying how she used to actually be on a robotics team, and she was like answering questions about like being on an all-girls robotics team in this class. Like, that's just a really cool thing to be able to watch. Like, I hope someday somebody does feel like, I went into this like because I saw how cool like building a robot was, or helping somebody through science was.
So when you have to write these things, I mean, do you have like the science book that says like, you know, like how do you find references? Because science is pretty darn big, you know? Yeah,
science is big. That is the one thing I've really learned about science through this. No, I've definitely, when I'm writing the script, it's a lot of like insert science talk here type of things. And then later I'll go back and I'll figure out, we try and ground everything in real science. Things aren't like, it's just a shrink ray. It's like, no, this is like how it kind of would work. And we do like research things. Also, one of the dads of one of the writers is a physicist, and we'll call him like in the room. We'll like put on the phone, and be like, "Hey, theoretically, let's say we were trying to build some kind of." But like sometimes when you're writing these things, you have to like Google stuff. And you're like, I'm not actually trying to build like a robot destroying, city destroying robot. Like, I just want to know for a TV show, could I do it if I had, like, let's say.
Right.
And you do like kind of fudge the timeline because Hero can 3D print anything immediately. But yeah, the science is definitely the hardest part for me anyway. I'm bad at science. It maybe if Big Hero 6 had come out, I wouldn't have been so scared of it.
Aw. Animation obviously takes a long time, from start to finish. When did you start working on Big Hero 6? And is it weird to like think about things and who you were when you were writing something that could have been X, Y, Z a long time ago? Only now coming onto screens.
I started almost exactly 2 years ago. I was living in New York at the time. Like, everything in my life has changed since and because of Big Hero 6. But it is weird. Like, yesterday, the clips they showed were from maybe the first episode idea I ever pitched. And so that's 2 years later, the first episode idea that I had is like finally realized. But so it takes, they were saying yesterday, it takes about a year from start to finish for each episode. So there's this amazing team of artists and people. I hadn't been on an animated show before. I didn't know how many steps it took between the script to the storyboard, to compiling everything to get it ready to ship to our animation studio, to getting it back as this like sort of fully pieced together thing, and then the post-production process starts. It's really intense and fascinating, and I can't draw to save my life, but it's really amazing to watch the artists at Disney at work, because they can do just spectacular things. I can do stick figures fine.
But stick figures with a script.
Yes,
Stick figures
exactly.
is art. I think you should not downplay
Thank you.
your drawing skills.
I really appreciate it. If you guys all want to be on my Pictionary team, you're more than welcome.
Done.
Thank you.